In the depths of Islamic history, there exists a story so extraordinary, so impossible to believe, that it challenges everything we think we know about sin, redemption, and the infinite mercy of Allah. A man who spent his entire life drowning in alcohol, whose breath reeked of wine day and night, whose very existence seemed to be a mockery of everything sacred and holy, found himself walking through the gates of paradise. But how? What single act could possibly outweigh a lifetime of one of the most forbidden sins in Islam? What deed was so magnificent, so pure, that it opened the doors of Jannah for someone who had never once touched his forehead to the ground in prayer while sober? This is not a fairy tale or a myth invented to comfort sinners. This is a true account that has been passed down through authentic Islamic sources, a story that the scholars have preserved to teach us about the boundless compassion of our Creator. It is a story that will shake your understanding of divine justice and mercy, and by the end, you will never look at a fellow human being the same way again. The man in our story lived in one of the bustling cities of the Muslim world centuries ago. His name has been lost to history, but his actions echo through eternity. From the moment he reached adulthood, this man made alcohol his constant companion. While the believers around him hurried to the mosque at the call of the adhan, he stumbled through the streets, his mind clouded by wine. While others prostrated before Allah in the depths of night, seeking forgiveness for their sins, he collapsed in taverns, unconscious from drink. While the righteous fasted during the blessed month of Ramadan, purifying their souls and drawing closer to their Lord, he continued his pattern of intoxication, seemingly oblivious to the sacred time around him. The people of his neighborhood knew him well. They whispered about him when he passed by, their faces filled with disgust and pity. Children were warned to stay away from him. Mothers pulled their young ones closer when they saw him approaching, and the pious men of the community shook their heads in dismay at his condition. He had become a living example of what happens when a person abandons the path of Allah, a walking reminder of the destructive power of sin. His clothes were often stained and wrinkled, his appearance disheveled, and his speech slurred from the constant influence of alcohol. To everyone who knew him, he represented everything that was wrong with turning away from the teachings of Islam. But Allah, in His infinite wisdom, sees what human eyes cannot perceive. While the people judged this man based on his outward appearance and obvious sins, Allah was watching something else entirely. Deep within this man's heart, despite the layers of sin and the fog of constant intoxication, there remained a spark of something beautiful, something that even years of drinking could not extinguish. This spark would soon ignite into an action so pure, so selfless, that it would completely transform his eternal destiny. Years passed, and the man's condition seemed to worsen. His drinking became more frequent, his behavior more erratic, and his separation from the community more complete. The local imam had tried to counsel him numerous times, approaching him with gentle words about repentance and the mercy of Allah. But the man seemed beyond reach. His family had long since distanced themselves from him, unable to bear the shame and heartbreak of watching their loved one destroy himself. Friends from his youth had given up on him, and even the most patient and compassionate members of the community had begun to view him as a lost cause. It was during this darkest period of his life that an event occurred which would become the defining moment of his existence. On a particularly cold winter night, when the wind howled through the streets and most people had retreated to the warmth of their homes, this drunkard was making his way through the city as usual. His steps were unsteady, his vision blurred, and his mind dulled by the wine he had consumed throughout the day. The streets were largely empty, save for a few late travelers hurrying to reach their destinations. As he turned into a narrow alley, something caught his attention through the haze of his intoxication. There, huddled against the wall of a building, was a figure that made his alcohol-clouded heart suddenly feel a pang of something he had not experienced in years. It was an old man, clearly poor and homeless, shivering violently in the bitter cold. The elderly stranger's clothes were nothing more than tattered rags that provided no protection against the harsh winter wind. His thin frame shook uncontrollably, and even from a distance it was clear that he was in danger of freezing to death. In that moment, something extraordinary happened within the mind and heart of this drunkard. Despite his condition, despite the fact that his own judgment was severely impaired by alcohol, he recognized the severity of the old man's situation. Perhaps it was the remnant of his natural human compassion, or perhaps it was Allah guiding his heart, even in his state of sin. But whatever the cause, he knew he had to act. Without hesitation, without thinking about his own comfort or convenience, he began to remove his own coat. This was not an expensive or particularly warm garment, but it was all he had to protect himself from the cold. His hands fumbled with the buttons, his coordination compromised by the alcohol in his system, but his determination was unwavering. He struggled out of the coat and approached the shivering old man. With gentle hands, he wrapped his own garment around the stranger's shoulders, covering him as best he could. The old man looked up with eyes filled with gratitude and surprise, unable to speak, but clearly moved by this unexpected act of kindness. But the drunkard was not finished. He reached into his pockets and pulled out every coin he possessed. It was not a fortune by any means, just a few small coins that he had probably intended to spend on more alcohol, but he placed them all in the old man's hands. Then, seeing that the stranger was still shivering despite the coat, the drunkard did something that defied all logic and self-preservation. He removed his own shirt, the last layer of warmth protecting his body from the freezing night air, and gave it to the old man as well. Now standing in the bitter cold, wearing nothing on his upper body, the drunkard looked at the old man one more time, satisfied that he had done everything within his power to help. He did not ask for thanks, he did not expect recognition, and he did not even think about the consequences of his actions. He simply turned and walked away, leaving the old man wrapped in his clothes and holding his money, while he himself faced the cold night with nothing but his compassion to warm him. What happened next is known only to Allah. But according to the accounts that have been preserved, the drunkard did not survive that night. The combination of his weakened condition from years of alcohol abuse and the exposure to the freezing temperatures without adequate clothing proved to be fatal. He was found the next morning, having collapsed not far from where he had encountered the old man, his body stiff with cold, but his face peaceful in death. The community that had spent years judging him and avoiding him now gathered around his lifeless form. Some expressed regret for how they had treated him. Others wondered if they could have done more to help him overcome his addiction, and many simply shook their heads at what they saw as the predictable end to a wasted life. Plans were made for a simple burial, with few expecting that anyone would mourn deeply for a man who had spent his life in such obvious sin. But then something happened that shook the entire community to its core. That very night, one of the most righteous men in the city, a scholar known for his piety and his closeness to Allah, experienced a dream so vivid and so powerful that he knew it could only be a divine revelation. In this dream, he saw the drunkard, but not as the community had known him. Instead, he saw him clothed in garments of light, his face radiant with joy, walking through gardens more beautiful than anything that exists in this world. The scholar approached the man in the dream, his heart filled with confusion and amazement. How could this be possible? How could someone who had spent his life in such obvious sin be in such a blessed state? The drunkard smiled at the scholar with a peace that transcended all understanding and spoke words that would be remembered and retold for generations to come. He explained that when he had given his coat to the freezing old man, he had not known who that person truly was. The old man was not just any homeless stranger, but was actually one of the awliya, the friends of Allah, a righteous servant who had been living in concealment among the people. This blessed individual had been sent by Allah as a test to see who among His creation would show mercy to one of His beloved servants, even when they themselves were in a state of sin and weakness. The act of selfless charity, performed without expectation of reward or recognition, had been witnessed by Allah with such pleasure that it outweighed every sin the drunkard had ever committed. The alcohol he had consumed, the prayers he had missed, the commands of Allah he had disobeyed, all of these were forgiven in an instant because of the purity of his intention and the magnitude of his sacrifice in that single moment of compassion. But the story did not end there. The scholar in the dream asked how such a thing was possible, how one good deed could outweigh a lifetime of sin. The drunkard's response revealed the depths of divine mercy that human minds struggle to comprehend. He explained that his act of charity had been performed in a state where his ego, his pride, and his self-interest had been completely suppressed by the alcohol. In that moment, he had acted with pure, unadulterated compassion, without any thought of gain or recognition. He had given everything he had to help another human being, even when his own survival was at stake. Furthermore, his sacrifice had been complete and total. He had not given from his excess or surplus, but had literally given the clothes off his back and every coin in his possession. He had held nothing back for himself, demonstrating a level of selflessness that is rarely seen, even among the most pious individuals. This type of complete sacrifice, motivated purely by compassion for another human being, is so beloved by Allah that it can indeed outweigh years of transgression. The scholar woke from his dream with his heart pounding and his mind reeling from what he had witnessed. He immediately went to the local imam and related the entire vision in detail. Word spread quickly throughout the community, and soon people began to view the drunkard's death in an entirely different light. The man they had dismissed as hopeless, the individual they had written off as beyond salvation, had performed an act of such pure charity that it had earned him immediate entry into paradise. This revelation transformed the way the community thought about judgment and mercy. They realized that while they had been focusing on the man's obvious sins, Allah had been looking at his heart and waiting for the moment when his true nature would emerge. They understood that divine mercy operates according to principles that human beings cannot fully grasp, and that even the most unlikely person can find redemption through a single act of pure kindness. The story spread beyond that single community and has been preserved in Islamic literature as a powerful reminder of several crucial teachings. First, it demonstrates that Allah's mercy is indeed infinite, and that no sin is too great to be forgiven when genuine repentance or exceptional charity occurs. The drunkard may not have had the opportunity for traditional repentance, but his selfless act served as a form of spiritual purification that cleansed his soul completely. Second, it teaches us about the danger of judging others based on their apparent sins or shortcomings. While the community saw only a hopeless drunkard, Allah saw a heart capable of extraordinary compassion. We are reminded that we cannot know the true state of another person's soul or what acts of goodness they may perform when we are not watching. Third, the story illustrates the immense value that Allah places on charity, particularly when it involves real sacrifice and is performed without expectation of reward. The drunkard's gift was not motivated by a desire to be seen as generous or to earn religious merit. It came from a pure place of human compassion that recognized another is suffering and responded immediately and completely. Fourth, it shows us that even in our lowest moments, even when we feel furthest from Allah, we still have the capacity for actions that can transform our eternal destiny. The drunkard's years of sin had not destroyed his ability to recognize suffering and respond with kindness. This inner capacity for good exists within every human being, no matter how lost they may appear to be. The scholars who have studied this account point out that it also teaches us about the mysterious ways in which Allah tests His servants. The old man who received the charity was not actually in need, but was a test sent by Allah to reveal the true character of those who encountered him. How many people might have passed by that night without stopping to help? How many might have offered minimal assistance while keeping most of their resources for themselves? The drunkard alone gave everything he had, and this complete sacrifice set him apart in the eyes of Allah. This story also provides comfort to those who struggle with addiction or other persistent sins. It shows that no matter how far someone may have fallen, no matter how many times they may have failed to live up to Islamic teachings, there is always hope for redemption. The key is to maintain some connection to basic human values like compassion, kindness, and charity, even when other aspects of religious observance may be lacking. The account has been used by Islamic counselors and spiritual guides to help people understand that Allah's judgment is based on the totality of a person's character and actions, not just their most visible behaviors. While this should never be taken as permission to engage in sinful behavior, it does provide hope for those who are struggling and reminds us all to focus on developing genuine compassion and generosity rather than merely following religious obligations without heart or spirit. Modern scholars who discuss this story often emphasize that it should not be misunderstood as minimizing the seriousness of alcohol consumption or other sins in Islam. The drunkard's redemption came not because his drinking was overlooked, but because his act of charity was so extraordinarily pure and selfless that it demonstrated the fundamental goodness that still existed within his soul. His story is exceptional precisely because such complete, self-sacrificing charity is rare and precious in the sight of Allah. The tale also highlights the Islamic teaching that every human being has multiple facets to their character, and that Allah sees all of these dimensions simultaneously. While people around the drunkard saw only his sin and failure, Allah also saw his capacity for mercy, his willingness to sacrifice for others, and the fundamental compassion that remained alive in his heart despite years of spiritual neglect. In Islamic theology, this story exemplifies the concept that Allah's mercy can manifest in ways that surprise and humble human understanding. It reminds believers that while they should strive to follow all of Allah's commands and avoid all sins, they should also cultivate the kind of deep, selfless compassion that can transform both their own souls and the lives of those around them. The drunkard's story has inspired countless people throughout the centuries to reconsider their approach to charity and compassion. It challenges believers to ask themselves whether they would be willing to give everything they possess to help a stranger in need, and whether their charitable acts come from genuine compassion or from a desire to be seen as righteous by others. Perhaps most importantly, this extraordinary account serves as a reminder that every human being we encounter may be carrying burdens we cannot see, struggling with challenges we cannot imagine, and capable of acts of goodness that could surpass our own. It teaches us to approach every person with humility, recognizing that the person we might be tempted to judge or dismiss could be the very one whose heart contains the kind of pure compassion that Allah loves most. The story of the drunkard who entered heaven through a single act of complete charity continues to be told, not because it encourages sin, but because it reveals the profound truth that Allah's mercy is greater than human understanding, and that the potential for redemption exists within every soul, no matter how lost it may appear to be. This remarkable account finds deep resonance with other stories preserved in Islamic tradition that demonstrate the extraordinary nature of divine mercy. Throughout the Hadith literature and the accounts of the righteous predecessors, we find similar examples of people whose apparent shortcomings in one area of religious observance were overshadowed by exceptional acts of kindness, charity, or faith. These stories collectively paint a picture of a creator whose mercy operates according to principles that often confound human expectations and challenge our tendency to categorize people as simply righteous or sinful. The scholars of Islamic jurisprudence and theology have spent considerable time analyzing stories like this one, not to diminish the importance of following religious law, but to help believers understand the comprehensive nature of divine judgment. They point out that while Islamic law provides clear guidelines for behavior and worship, Allah's final judgment of each individual takes into account factors that no human being can fully comprehend. The totality of a person's intentions, circumstances, struggles, and actions are all weighed in a divine balance that operates with perfect justice and infinite mercy. The account also challenges contemporary Muslims to examine their own approach to charity and compassion. In an age when charitable giving is often publicized through social media, and when people frequently give with the expectation of recognition or tax benefits, the drunkard's completely selfless charity stands as a powerful example of pure giving. His story asks modern believers whether they would be willing to give everything they possess to help a stranger, and whether their charitable acts truly come from the heart or from other motivations. Islamic counselors and spiritual advisors often use this story to help people who are struggling with guilt over past sins or current spiritual failings. They emphasize that while the story should never be used to justify sinful behavior, it does demonstrate that Allah's mercy is always available to those who show genuine compassion and generosity to others. The key lesson is that maintaining and developing one's capacity for selfless love and charity is crucial for spiritual well-being, even when other aspects of religious observance may be lacking. The story also serves as a reminder of the Islamic teaching that every human being is created with an innate disposition toward good, known as the fitrah. Despite years of sinful behavior that had clouded his spiritual state, the drunkard's fitrah remained intact and manifested itself in his moment of encounter with human suffering. This demonstrates that no matter how far someone may stray from the path of righteousness, their fundamental human capacity for compassion and mercy can still emerge when circumstances call for it. In the broader context of Islamic spiritual literature, this account fits within a tradition of stories that emphasize the supremacy of divine mercy over divine justice. While Allah is certainly just and will hold people accountable for their actions, His mercy is described in the Quran and Hadith as encompassing all things and as being greater than His wrath. Stories like that of our drunkard serve to illustrate this principle in concrete terms that believers can understand and find comfort in. The preservation and transmission of this story through generations of Islamic scholars demonstrates its enduring value as a teaching tool. Each generation discovers new layers of meaning and finds fresh applications for the eternal truths it contains. In times when communities become judgmental, or when individuals lose hope in Allah's forgiveness, stories like this one serve to restore balance and perspective to people's understanding of divine mercy. Contemporary Islamic teachers often emphasize that while this story reveals the extraordinary nature of Allah's mercy, it should inspire greater devotion rather than complacency about sin. The drunkard's redemption came through an act of such exceptional charity that it stands as a challenge to all believers to examine whether their own acts of giving and compassion measure up to such a standard of selfless sacrifice. The story ultimately serves as a powerful reminder that in Islam, the quality of one's heart and the sincerity of one's actions carry more weight than external appearances or social status. The drunkard possessed neither religious learning nor social respectability, but his heart contained the kind of pure compassion that Allah treasures above all else. His story continues to inspire believers to look beyond surface appearances when judging others, and to cultivate within themselves the kind of selfless love that can transform both this life and the next. As we reflect on this extraordinary account, we are challenged to consider our own hearts and actions. Would we have the courage and compassion to give everything we possess to help a stranger in need? Do our charitable acts come from genuine love for humanity or from other motivations? Are we quick to judge others based on their apparent failings, or do we remember that Allah sees what we cannot see and knows what we do not know? The story of the drunkard who entered heaven through a single act of perfect charity continues to ask these profound questions of every person who hears it, challenging us to become more compassionate, more generous, and more humble in our understanding of how divine mercy operates in the world. The profound impact of this story extends far beyond its immediate moral lessons into the very foundations of Islamic spirituality and understanding of divine justice. When we examine the deeper theological implications of this account, we discover layers of meaning that speak to fundamental questions about human nature, divine mercy, and the mysterious ways in which Allah evaluates the hearts and actions of His servants. The story challenges conventional thinking about righteousness and sin, forcing us to confront our own assumptions about who deserves salvation and who does not. In Islamic tradition, the concept of divine testing takes many forms, and the encounter between the drunkard and the disguised saint represents one of the most profound examples of how Allah examines the true character of His servants. The test was designed not to evaluate the drunkard's religious knowledge or his adherence to ritual obligations, but to reveal the fundamental compassion that existed within his heart, despite years of apparent spiritual neglect. This type of testing speaks to the Islamic belief that Allah looks beyond external appearances and judges based on the true condition of the heart. The story also illuminates the Islamic teaching about the different levels of charity and their varying rewards in the sight of Allah. While giving from one's surplus wealth is certainly commendable and rewarded, the type of charity that involves genuine sacrifice carries exponentially greater spiritual weight. The drunkard's gift represented the highest level of charitable giving because it involved complete self-sacrifice with no expectation of return or recognition. Islamic scholars have long taught that such acts of pure altruism possess a transformative power that can fundamentally alter one's spiritual state and relationship with Allah. Furthermore, this account demonstrates the Islamic principle that intention and sincerity are more important than the magnitude of the act itself. The drunkard did not give vast sums of money or build grand mosques or sponsor elaborate charitable programs. His gift was modest in material terms, consisting only of his worn coat, simple shirt, and few coins. Yet the purity of his intention and the completeness of his sacrifice made this humble offering more valuable in Allah's sight than the grandest charitable gestures performed with mixed motives or incomplete sincerity. The timing of the drunkard's charitable act also carries deep significance within Islamic understanding of divine grace and redemption. The fact that this transformative moment occurred during the final hours of his life speaks to the Islamic belief that Allah's mercy can manifest at any time, even in the most unlikely circumstances. This provides hope for those who may feel that they have strayed too far from the path of righteousness to ever find their way back. The story assures us that as long as life remains, the possibility for redemption continues to exist. The mysterious identity of the old man as one of the awliya adds another dimension to the story that connects with broader Islamic teachings about the hidden saints who walk among ordinary people. These friends of Allah are described in Islamic mystical literature as individuals who have achieved such closeness to their Creator that they serve as divine instruments in the world, often testing others through their apparent vulnerability or need. The tradition teaches that showing kindness to such individuals, even unknowingly, brings tremendous blessings and divine favor. This element of the story also emphasizes the Islamic teaching that every encounter with another human being carries potential spiritual significance. We never know when we might be meeting someone who holds a special place in Allah's sight, and therefore every act of kindness or cruelty carries weight that extends far beyond the immediate moment. The drunkard story reminds us to treat every person we meet with dignity and compassion, recognizing that they may be carrying blessings or tests that we cannot perceive. The role of the righteous scholar's dream in validating and transmitting this account reflects the important place that divine visions hold within Islamic tradition. Throughout Islamic history, significant spiritual truths have often been communicated through the dreams of pious individuals, particularly when these revelations serve to teach important lessons to the broader community. The scholar's vision served not only to confirm the drunkard's salvation, but also to ensure that the lesson of his story would be preserved and shared with future generations. The community's initial reaction to the drunkard's death and their subsequent transformation upon learning of his divine reward illustrates another crucial aspect of this story. It demonstrates how easily human beings can misjudge others based on limited information and surface appearances. The people who had dismissed the drunkard as hopeless were forced to confront their own spiritual blindness and recognize that Allah's evaluation of human worth operates according to criteria that transcend social conventions and apparent religious observance. This aspect of the story serves as a powerful warning against the sin of spiritual pride and the danger of believing oneself to be superior to others based on external displays of righteousness. The community members who had looked down on the drunkard suddenly realized that his heart contained qualities that they themselves might lack, despite their regular attendance at prayers and their outward conformity to Islamic practices. This humbling realization transformed their understanding of what true righteousness means and challenged them to examine their own hearts more honestly. The story also speaks to contemporary issues within Muslim communities regarding addiction, mental health, and social ostracism. In many cases, individuals struggling with addictions or other persistent sins find themselves marginalized by their communities, often leading to deeper isolation and spiritual despair. The drunkard's story provides a counter-narrative that emphasizes the continued presence of divine mercy and the possibility of redemption, even for those who appear most lost. Islamic counselors and social workers often reference this story when working with individuals who have been rejected or given up on by their families and communities. It serves as a reminder that no human being should ever be considered beyond hope, and that maintaining relationships of compassion and support with struggling individuals may provide them with opportunities for the kind of transformative acts that can alter their eternal destiny. The story's emphasis on the supremacy of compassionate action over ritual observance also provides guidance for contemporary Muslims who may become overly focused on external forms of worship while neglecting the development of genuine empathy and concern for others. While the story certainly does not diminish the importance of prayer, fasting, and other religious obligations, it does emphasize that these practices are meant to cultivate the kind of heart that naturally responds to human suffering with immediate and generous assistance. In our modern world, where social media often encourages performative displays of charity and where tax incentives and public recognition frequently motivate charitable giving, the drunkard's completely anonymous and unrewarded act of generosity stands as a challenging example of what true charity looks like. His story asks contemporary believers to examine their own motivations for giving and to strive for the kind of pure, selfless compassion that seeks no reward beyond the alleviation of another's suffering. The account also provides perspective on the relationship between divine mercy and divine justice within Islamic theology. While Allah is described as both infinitely merciful and perfectly just, stories like this one help believers understand how these seemingly competing attributes work together in divine judgment. The drunkard's sins were not ignored or overlooked, but they were outweighed by an act of such pure goodness that it demonstrated the fundamental righteousness of his character, despite his obvious failings. This understanding of divine judgment, as comprehensive and nuanced, rather than simplistic and categorical, provides comfort to believers who struggle with their own spiritual imperfections. It suggests that Allah's evaluation of each individual takes into account the totality of their character, circumstances, and actions, rather than focusing solely on their most visible successes or failures. This comprehensive divine knowledge means that acts of hidden kindness, moments of genuine compassion, and sincere struggles against personal demons all carry weight in the final accounting. The preservation and continued retelling of this story throughout Islamic history demonstrates its enduring relevance and power to transform hearts and minds. Each generation of Muslims has found in it fresh insights about divine mercy, human nature, and the true meaning of righteousness. The story continues to challenge believers to look beyond surface appearances when evaluating others and to cultivate within themselves the kind of selfless compassion that Allah treasures above all else. As we conclude our reflection on this extraordinary account, we are left with profound questions that each individual must answer for themselves. The story of the drunkard who entered heaven through a single act of perfect charity serves as both an inspiration and a challenge, offering hope to those who feel lost while simultaneously raising the bar for what genuine righteousness truly means. It reminds us that in the sight of Allah, the condition of the heart matters more than external appearances, and that the capacity for transformative goodness exists within every human soul, waiting for the right moment to emerge and change everything.